Hey, I'm Anthony.
I'm Michelle.
I'm Marisa.
I'm Colette.
And I'm Cindy.
And for our group, we're presenting on Freudian psychoanalysis. So what is Freudian psychoanalysis exactly? So Freudian psychoanalysis was created by Sigmund Freud, who was an Austrian neurologist, and he invented psychoanalysis, which is the idea that people can be helped in therapy by making their unconscious thoughts, desires, and motivations known. Psychoanalysis aims to release repressed memories, emotions, dreams, and experiences to help people heal from traumatic experiences in their own lives. Freud and his theory of psychoanalysis are often noted and remembered for his model of the human mind. Freud's model divides the human psyche into three layers: the id, the ego, and the superego. So what is the Freudian psyche? The psyche was first divided into two parts: the unconscious and the conscious. The conscious is the part that relates to the external world, while the unconscious is the site of instinctual drives and repressed wishes, according to John's story. After developing these two, he added in the preconscious, which is what we cannot remember at any given moment, but know we can recall with some mental effort. His final model introduces the three parts of the human psyche: the id, the ego, and the superego. So starting off with the id, it's primitive and instinctual and holds our instincts to survive. It's full of sexual drives, aggression, our instincts to survive, like our needs for food and water and those kinds of things. It also holds hidden memories. And the id operates on the pleasure principle, which is the idea that we want immediate gratification for all of our needs. Then the ego mediates between the id and the superego. It's like the balance in between the two. It's our voice of reason, our decision maker, and this operates on the reality principle, which is the idea of delayed gratification. And delayed gratification acknowledges what our needs and wants are, but knows that we have to wait and the gratification will be delayed. So it keeps the id in check in that way. And the ego develops as early on as infancy. And the superego is where morality lives. It encourages responsibility and holds our sense of right versus wrong. It gives guidelines for making judgments and good decisions. And the superego develops around age 5. So let's talk about psychoanalysis in the novel Dracula. So a literary work is believed to be the manifestation of the author's own mental thoughts, disorders, and desires. And psychoanalytical criticism argues that literary texts and like dreams in certain literary texts express the secret unconsciousness and desires, anxieties, repressions of the author. Sigmund Freud argues that the creation of civilization has resulted in the repression of human instincts, and that the most important instinctual drives are sexual, according to John's story. So in Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's believed that Dracula, the novel, could be considered as an unconscious expression of Stoker's own repressed sexuality during his own lifetime.
The Oedipus complex. As mentioned earlier, the superego emerges as the internalization of the authority figure of a child. Before it emerges in a child's psyche, the child must go through what Freud calls the Oedipus complex, based off of Sophocles' play of Oedipus. Around the age of 3 to 5, a child will grow feelings of desire for their opposite sex parent, as well as seeing their same-sex parent as a rival in their relationship. As the child begins to understand that their desire needs to be suppressed because of their moral authority, it marks the end of their Oedipus complex and the emergence of the superego. A child will begin to identify with the same-sex parent rather than perceiving them as a threat, and soon gives up their desires. The superego begins as the introjection of authority of the child's parents, producing what we perceive as the person's conscience.
Substitute dreams and interpretations of text. Sigmund Freud had what he called substitute dreams, which, when applied to literary texts, allows readers to symbolically play out desires and fantasies in text they read. Regarding the idea that the meaning of a text isn't in a text itself, but it relies on how readers associate their opinions and produce their own meanings, Analyzing Stoker's Dracula with a psychoanalytical perspective opens new horizons towards the meaning of a text. With previous knowledge of Freudian psychoanalysis, reading and analyzing Dracula can open up many new and strange perspectives, as will be for other topics such as post-colonialism, Marxism, feminism, or queer theory. We can interpret a situation in which Freud substitutes dreams and his theory of the Oedipus complex and psyche plays. Chapter 3 of Dracula has Harker stuck in the Count's castle, which is compared to a veritable prison. The Count warns Harker that if he should leave his room, he should not fall asleep in any part of the castle. Dracula himself sends a strict and straightforward warning to Harker, asserting himself as the authoritative figure. Harker, not long after the talk, writes in his journal that he shouldn't have any reason to fear to sleep anywhere else unadvised. He even writes, "The Count's warning came into my mind, but I took pleasure in disobeying it." Harker in this situation is the child, in which he ignores the warnings of an authoritative figure in order to satisfy his own desires, exploring the castle without interference. This can be taken either two ways. The Count is the authoritative figure, the superego. The Count is the authoritative figure in an Oedipal approach, the mother or father figure. Morris Richardson calls Dracula a quite blatant demonstration of the Oedipus complex. Exploring further into the castle, he falls asleep in a room that wasn't his own, despite the Count's fervent warnings. He encounters Dracula's 3 women and sexually attractive. In what seems to be an act of oral sex, which the first bride on her knees in front of Harker, the bride represents Harker's desires. Approaching this with the theory of substitute dreams, we can interpret these erotic wishes being disguised in symbolic form.
Captivated by his own fantasies to realize the true danger he was about to face, Count Dracula appears and sends the brides away, censoring Harker's fantasies and desires before it had proceeded any further, then fainting. Count Dracula bursting in and stopping the scene before it progressed can be taken as a personification of the mind's own censor, the superego, which are the ideals and moral a person has that has been taught and introduced to them. These instances, when not applied to any theory, can be read as Harker simply being given a warning and encountering a problem caused by his own negligence. Previous knowledge and psychoanalysis has helped many to interpret these simple scenes as much more than they appear.
According to Freud, our personality derives from a conflict between two forces, our biological aggression and pleasure-seeking drives, also known as sex. Throughout the novel, sex represents a form of procreation, which eventually leads to a continuation of its species. Vampirism, on the other hand, symbolizes sex and also leads to a continuation of their species as well. Throughout the time that the novel was published, humans were the ones who were repressing all their sexual desires due to the fact that sexuality was not only neglected, but was not displayed vividly throughout the Victorian era as well. However, vampires were the ones to embrace their sexuality, which emphasizes the fact that the author, Bram Stoker, constructed the characters as a means to break through the social norms of sexuality during the time. In terms of aggression leading desires lead to unplanned actions. For example, Jonathan writes, "I determined that if death came, he should find me ready. Despair seized me, then a wild desire took me to obtain that key at any risk." Throughout the novel, it's clear that Jonathan begins to develop signs of paranoia. Paranoia is defined as an unjustifiable suspiciousness and mistrust of others. Jonathan begins to feel as though he's being watched as he stays there in Dracula's castle. For example, he writes that the castle is a veritable prison and I am a prisoner. The conviction of my helplessness overpowered all other feelings. And he also writes that I have written my letters. Mina's is in shorthand. Should the letters not carry, then Count shall not yet know the secret of the extent of my knowledge, which emphasizes the fact that Jonathan is feeling trapped in his castle and fears the fact that he's being watched by Dracula at all costs. Thanks for listening. Any questions?